We're talking about secrets of Sesquicentennial and Ter-Centennial brands or organizations. I'm Vinod Hayagriv. I'm managing director of a company that deals in jewelry, which is about 155 years old. However, what's important here is we're talking about organizations around the world and how each of us can be tailoring our organizations that we either work in, own it, or be part of to last beyond our life. What we are here talking about is a word that's called Ter-Centenary. We all know centenary, which is 100 years old. We know Sesquicentennial, which is 150 years old. And we are now talking about a new word, which is rarely used. It's called Ter-Centenary. What it means is that how does one make a plan to last 300 years? East India Company, as all of you know, ruled India for 200 years. The East India Company had the blessings of the Queen of England. In spite of that, they lasted 200 and then perished. Similarly, but differently, State Bank of India, which was earlier the Bank of Calcutta, became State Bank of India, and now 220 years. And still thriving, still successful in the country as the number one bank of India. I recently walked into a bookstore in London at Piccadilly called Hatchard's. Hatchard's is a bookstore, a small bookstore, a medium-sized bookstore actually, that sells only books. When I went in there, I was a little surprised how in a world of digital books sellers are doing well. When I walked into the store, there was a little carpet in the front which said Hatchard's 220 years or 1797. It caught my eye. I said, how does a bookstore last in the same location for so long and still doing well? Because there were lots of people in the store buying books. Similarly, a gun manufacturer, a wonderful manufacturer of artistic guns called Beretta, is 500 years old. I'm intrigued. What did they do right? Of course, if you look at the gun on the screen, you would see they're very, very artistically crafted. What are the secrets of a Ter-Centenary organization? An organization that lasts 100, 200, or 300 years. David Fluff is the architect of Obama's win in 2008, the first presidential election in the United States. When I first met him here in Bangalore, after a dinner, I asked him, David, tell me, what is the secret of a lasting organization? Very crisply, he said, they are like ocean liners. Organizations are like ocean liners. They sail in the high seas, in calm waters, sometimes in rough seas, but all the time sailing. Now, an ocean liner is so large, they're not small boats, but even a small boat is important. I will come to it a little later. Large organizations cannot take 90-degree turns. If it needs to turn, it turns very slowly in a curvaceous manner. That way, the ship is not going to capsize. This is important even in organizations. Therefore, what is the purpose of business? A purpose of a business has to be understood by anyone who's working in the business, who are leading the business, or in any way floating a business. One needs to understand what is the organization's history, whether it is a business organization, a social service organization, an educational institution, any kind of workplace needs to understand the history. This particular image here is of an organization that's about 155 years old, still thriving. When you go back into studying the history, you have to understand the core philosophy of the founders. Who founded the organization? When was it founded? What was the purpose for which he or she had founded the organization? What are the philosophies? What is the core philosophy? Everybody has a core philosophy. Every organization has a core philosophy. What is that core philosophy? You've got to delve deeper into the fabric of that organization to understand. Similarly, what is a product or a service that they are dishing out to people? Is it a profit motive organization? Is it a non-profit organization? Is it a high profit? Is it a low profit? You need to understand what is the basis of that founding fathers of an organization. Similarly, what is the social motive? Is there a social motive? Then you also speak about scale of operations. Is it a place that's serving the community in that locality of a city or a town or a village? Or is it something that's spread over the state, the country, the globe, the continent? What kind of areas of operations does it have? How big or small is the organization? And thereafter, once you understand the background of the purpose, you are in a better place to go forward. That was one of my primary objectives when I stepped into my organization that I am working now for about 40 years. Is the first few years was to understand what's behind the organization, what's the history of the organization, what is the core purpose. And that doesn't come written anywhere. It has to be discussed with the leaders of the organization and find out. You'll get to understand the real leadership thought process. And the leadership thought process also has to learn from their leaders, and so on, it goes on. Several organizations in the world have many generations working. 1, 2, 3. The longer the age of the organization, the more number of generations there would be in that organization. Therefore, there would be a generational conflict. There would be. It would be impossible for us to think there would not be a conflict. But how we deal with those conflicts, how do we handle some of these generational differences, the new age versus the old age, and so on. Should the business thrive and last? That's another question that I've always been asked. Why should a business last? Because there is history behind, or there would be history to be made in the future. This is the Royal House of Mysore, where they've lasted here in South India for over 500 years. No doubt they had a little gap in their ruling when the Tipu Sultan conquered their territory. But the British came and defeated the Tipu Sultan, and then the Mysore royal family continued to rule this state. Now it's a democracy and it's part of India. But what I'm trying to say is that you need to know the history of what happened in the past. That gives you a great perspective into the future. What is the purpose of the business? When you look at organizations, there is a purpose. Now, in this particular case, it's an educational purpose where the organization wants to impart education as part of their activities. They're doing something else, but they also want to educate. There is a possibility in large organizations, as time goes by, you're going to focus on various different areas. For example, there's a trading activity, there's a manufacturing activity, there's an export activity, there's something else. But you also have to find out if there is something else beyond what is available to the eye. And that, in this particular case, I'm talking about, they have a core focus to impart education to the lesser privileged, or for those who need education at low cost or no cost. What, therefore, is important is to find out what is the soul of the business. Most often, it's money making. We all know money makes the world go round, but there is something else, and that's the culture. That's the fabric below the fabric, and that makes a difference. Is it a personal benefit or is it a larger purpose? What happens as time goes by is that there would be multitude of mental outlooks that come in. People study in different universities, different schools, different parts of the world. Japanese education is different from an American education, different from a UK, different from India. The question is, how do we bring all of that alignment into an organization that had multitude of outlooks and multitude of ages? There would be conflicts, but the conflict should be such that it is something that one needs to resolve, irrespective of what the conflict is. Because at the end of the day, What's important is that we need to go above ourselves for the benefit of an organization. Quite often I'm asked, if there are multitude of thought processes of multitude of generations, how does one progress? Can I go into something else? The answer to me has been, yes, it's possible, so long as it kind of comes within the ambit of the overall core purpose or the core design. If that is the case, an allied part of the business or the organization can be happening. For example, if the bookseller in London was selling 220 years of books, they can go into digital books because it is still part of their core. But if they had to start making furniture, or if they had to make cars, it would be very different. It would shake the organization's philosophy. It would shake the organization's capability to handle something so diverse. Therefore, good leaders in an organization never rock the boat. If there are 100 people in the boat rowing the boat, I think there is to be a synergy. All of them have to row the same direction. If they think, I am just one of 100 and I want to go the other way around, you're going to disrupt operations. And that's why we say leaders never rock the boat. I believe organizations must be built to last. Why? Take, for example, the gun-making company called Beretta, or take an example of Rolls-Royce, the cars that they make. They've been making cars for, decades, 100 years plus. They've been taken over by BMW today. BMW makes engines, puts them into the same design as a Rolls-Royce. The Rolls-Royce car is valued more than a BMW. It's the same engine. It could be the same gearbox. But there's something that's different, and that is the culture and the history and the value and the prestige that Rolls-Royce brought to the table. And that, to me, is so important when you build a business or you continue your business. Rolls-Royce, for example, till date has commanded the highest prices for cars, and they have a culture of great delivery. BMW does have it, and other cars do have it. But out of all of them, one brand stands out. So therefore, we are talking about the longevity of organizations is of very great importance. That philosophy must be lived every day in every organization. If that is lived, you live the brand, as we call it, not work in the brand. You live the brand. You inculcate the brand into your personal life. You are the brand. That means if there are 100,000 people working in an organization, or 5,000 people, or 10,000 people, or 1,000 people, everybody needs to live the brand. If there has a different, what you call, disconnect, it's time that they either bring their alignment or they get out of that, because if they remain with a misalignment, then it's a dangerous aspect for the organization and for themselves. So this is something that I thought I would share from my personal example, because that's how I've inculcated my own self into the organization that I work in. And I found when I speak to other industrialists and other people in this country and around the world, I found the same underlying principle, and that's alignment, alignment, and alignment. Thank you very much.